Hello and welcome back into the studio. Today we are pursuing a painting that is near and dear to my heart. It's a painting based off of William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, a book that I read this past year and a book that I'm drawing a lot of imagery from. I hope to be making a whole series around moments, scenes from this wonderfully chaotic book that takes place in the Deep South and follows the turmoil of a family trying to bury a loved one. There's kind of dark humor and comedy all wrapped up in it, and I want to kind of bring that to the forefront of these paintings that are set in the Old South, if you will. And at the same time, I want to be walking you through my process. While it might seem strange to start here, it is kind of a moment in my painting process that kind of caught me off guard. Painting in all of these darks, well, after kind of wrapping up the nose, was its own challenge. I knew that it would kind of be a tricky subject to master. This shadow across the far side of the face is both darker than all of the light highlights around it, and yet much lighter than the dark, deep shadow that's going to go in next to it later on. And so as I'm painting this, I'm really having to consider these moments. I know that all of this is going to have to be cohesive later. And I think that can be the hardest piece to master while becoming an artist, especially in your fledgling early stages. Keeping an eye out and having a perception of everything to come and how the painting is operating in the moment and going to interact with that. All these colors that I'm laying down, they're going to change and look way different when these darks are laid down next to them. And so in the back of my mind, I have that going on. But at the beginning of the painting, right now, starting this nose, all that's kind of further away. I know that when I'm making this painting, and especially in this early stage, I find a point that's full of deep, rich contrast. This nose is no different. By grabbing these really dark colors, I'm beginning to shape out all the colors that I'll be using in the skin tones elsewhere in the face. This is kind of the basis for that. And by dropping in a subtle highlight in the midst of all these shadows, I'm already kind of getting a feel for what that's going to look like elsewhere. This use of this cerulean blue and zinc white mixture is this kind of amazing transitional color that you'll see me rely on throughout the portrait painting process. These pinks kind of blend perfectly with it. They both have that cool undertone, and she naturally just has pale skin, the subject. And so in my mind, I'm really considering how do I bring out the nuance of that pale skin and yet create some warmth there as well. The shadows really shift into warmer areas, and part of making a portrait dynamic is not just relying on value, and by value I mean light and dark. Part of making a dynamic portrait is really relying on tone and shade and warmth and coolness as well. So you'll see me kind of bounce back and forth between these really deep, rich reds that are going on and pinks. And at the same time, in a moment right next to it, you see a cerulean blue mixture that's kind of budging towards and pushing towards gray, creating these really cool gray tones in the skin. And so this warmth and coolness creates a really dynamic portrait. And I would encourage you to kind of pay attention to that as you're making any painting of your own. And yet, as I'm kind of considering this, I'm also thinking about different color tonal zones. By that I mean I know that this nose is really red and that the lips are perhaps as red as well, but also a different kind of red. They have a deepness to them. They're really full, and by virtue of that, they have a lot more blues in them. So this is going to be almost a purple. But to bring that purple out, we're going to rely upon burnt siennas and other tones in the shadows to provide the warmth that is there in the lips. Because as it does shift towards the light, it pulls out those purple tones. And in the shadows, that warmth is still retained. So burnt sienna, which is this really deep brown that's also vibrantly red, operates as a way to bring life to those shadows. All right, so we're back in the studio today, and I just kind of want to give you a little update where we're at. So you can kind of see over here just what we're working with. We've already kind of painted in a lot of these kind of shadows, this dark area, this dark section of the face. And I want to kind of work out from that and paint in the rest of the face, which kind of has a lot of light on it. And I guess I'm a little bit nervous at this point because, well, all that light and just the angle of everything makes this a little challenging to paint. Challenging though it may be, I'm still having to kind of wrestle with that and lean into that challenge. Each day when I kind of show up here in the studio, there is this nervous trepidation that I have. Is it worth me pursuing this task at hand? Sometimes it feels like a mountain that's unclimbable, and yet I have to try climbing it all the same. The studio can be a place you really wrestle in, not because the painting is fighting back with you, though many artists will use that expression a lot of times, but because there is more of an inward battle, I think, as an artist. We have to kind of confront our own maybe inability or our lack. So often I realize in a painting that I am not really well equipped for a certain moment or to paint in a certain way. And I have to kind of show up to that and ask questions of myself throughout that process. In this instance, I'm really kind of wondering, are these the right skin tones? Did I choose this right? I'm loving how this eye looks now on this end of things, viewing this video with you. But in the process, I was really kind of doubting there for a moment if this eye was going to look natural, or if it was going to be maybe a touch too dark in those tones that I've applied, and by virtue of that, maybe appearing like it's a black eye or something, or maybe it has been somehow bruised in some way. And so I myself, despite having spent thousands of hours wrestling in the studio, still have to face up to those questions of, is my painting good enough? Is this worth me being here? Am I a good enough artist for this? And luckily, I think I can sometimes kind of be overwhelmed and overjoyed with the fact that a painting goes better than I thought it might in the beginning. You'll see here that I'm just taking my time, slowly enjoying this painting process. It can be really tempting to let this painting escape from you, and by that I mean just kind of going too fast, just trying to rush through the process. But a painting is kind of just a friend that's wanting some quality time. It kind of asks you to slow down and go at its own pace, which maybe seems strange, but perhaps you know the feeling when you're trying to rush something along and the detail, the attention that it needed to actually flourish is kind of gone. And so you end up having to rework something if you rushed it too much. I have learned over the years that it's far better to slow down, to be present in a painting, than to try and rush it through. when I'm really trying to push a painting through to the end, just trying to complete some goal or deadline, I know that that work isn't going to measure up to what I had in mind. I will make sacrifices bit by bit along the way, and those little momentary sacrifices will make the painting kind of fall apart. It will still be a painting, and it might still be beautiful, but at the same time, I know that it will be lacking in that quality that I want out of every painting that I make. A quality of really vibrant beauty that's really considered, that has an intentionality throughout the entire piece. In this instance, all of these tones in this section of the face were kind of wrestling with me, kind of asking me to just paint in one single color and just let that be that. But there's subtle variation in shadow and form here that shapes how we perceive this cheek, this jawline, this neckline, all of which aren't extremely strong or pronounced, and that's a good thing. But I do have little moments of relief like this, where I get to paint this shadow, this transition. It's kind of my strength as an artist. I've grown to accept that over the years, to love that, and to really hone in and rely upon that. So I meant to stop after painting the face and give a little pause before painting the ear, but I guess I got a little lost in the painting process and just got sucked into it, and ultimately just ended up painting the ear in one fell swoop. It's not to mean that it wasn't without its own little challenges. I actually enjoy the challenges that come along with the painting. And in this case, the ear was its own little challenge. I somehow just have an intuitive grasp of how to use this burnt sienna, which is this deep red brown, which I've already talked about, but it has so much character and quality, and especially in these moments, just is this perfect blending agent with our cerulean blue mixture. Right when they're laid right next to each other like this, it makes skin tones kind of pop and come to life. Especially with that pink, we kind of get this sense of the light that's happening here, and the fact that the shadow is really sharp and edgy and is really driven by that ear. Some subtle implications, some subtle use of lighter strokes in this area gives it some life. And before we paint in more of those skin tones on the ear, we really want to use our burnt siennas to shape it, to create those dark tones, those areas first, because we'll build out from there. So often I see people muddy up their dark colors, and it destroys any contrast that your painting might have. Instead, I want to leave those areas as they are and kind of paint in those lighter tones and those mid-tones around it. When you approach a painting this way, it really has a knack for kind of maintaining its saturation and coming to life. You'll see over here on the ear, I'm really honing in on those deep reds, relying on pinks that are quite a bit brighter, deeper, more pink than the skin tones around it. And some of that's coming from those deep areas of the shadow as well. That burnt sienna is lending itself to it. These lighter little strokes really allow us to observe the oil hitting the ear, and then these little brush strokes of hair allow it to just kind of be this fuzzy little piece. But bringing it all together is a little detail that I wanted to add, this little earring. It's subtle, it's not huge, but it allows this piece to really come together in a beautiful way. I'm so happy with how far we've come in this painting today, and I love how it's coming together. In the meantime, I have some really detailed videos on how I made different elements of this painting, of this face, on my Patreon. If you want to learn more about painting, you can check it out there. Otherwise, Stick around for part 2, and I'll see you soon.